One of the big things is passive house literacy, I like to say. There are many people who have been with passive house through the beginning. They love it. They are so educated. They have so much knowledge. But then you also have people like me who, and this is all new to me, been in the field for 5 years learning about all of these things. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there like me.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. You can also check out our Reimagined Buildings YouTube channel for some great inspiration for both building new or renovating. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to the Passive House podcast, and we're joined again by Ilka and Mary. How are you, Ilka?
Better than last week, definitely. Air quality is back up.
Air.
Yeah, we have fresh air now, so all's good.
Yeah, and well, that's good to hear. Good to hear. And things weren't too bad on where you were, Mary.
Oh no, things are great here. Not quite summer feeling, but other than that, things are great. And I'll take cool over heat wave any day.
Zach, I noticed that we've got an article up about the wildfire.
Yeah, that's right. Chad Dickerson, who has a passive house brownstone in Brooklyn, talks about his experience with and looking at kind of outdoor air quality, indoor air quality, and how that shifted, and basically his experience living in a passive house during this intense wildfire smoke event in New York.
Yeah, some good learning there, as we talked about last week. All right. Well, we've got another great interview with Emily Smith from Revision, who we've had on the show. We've had Revision on the show before. Do some amazing stuff, and they featured on the Accelerator as well. Do a whole range of excellent services around architecture and consulting. So looking forward to getting into that. But before we do, let's have a quick shout out to our supporters.
Yeah, so a big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Mitsubishi Electric Trane HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks as well to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Gradient, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Right. All right. Well, let's jump into our interview. This is Emily Smith and her conversation with Ilka and Mary.
Welcome to our podcast, Emily Smith. We're going to hear quite a bit about PHIUS rating today, but first, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Emily Smith, and right now I work at Revision Architecture. But I started back, how far back can we go about my background? I have always really been interested in, renewable technologies, water management. I used to do creek cleanups when I was little. So in college, I started as a mechanical engineering major. Mechanical engineering majors do a lot of math. And for me, there wasn't that much emphasis on purpose of what you're doing. What are you creating? How is this impacting people? And I think that there was a real lack of that for me. So I decided to switch into environmental studies. And this was a very large scale, let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about risk analysis. But I got to learn about a bunch of different things: city planning, corporate social responsibility, all of these topics. And And then I was also able to intern at the EPA. So to like see government working very slowly. These are all of the things that kind of impacted me and like brought me to where I am today. So when I was launched into the professional world, I have always loved buildings, loved the built environment, but I had no formal training in architecture. And so I was lucky enough to be picked up by Kitchen and Associates, or Thriven Design right now, as an energy analyst. And there it was a really good intro into the built environment because I was working with architects, working with engineers, working with construction. And really what my main role there was implementing the Energy Star program for new homes, as well as enterprise green communities. So that got me working in construction, doing inspections, seeing the good and bad of constructions that exist, especially with affordable housing. And this got my confidence up a lot because I was going on construction sites and I had some authority with me and I could tell people what to do or what not to do. So that was kind of cool. But it also got me thinking a lot about, especially in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, all of these energy programs are tied to money. And so that's why developers are electing to pursue these certifications. Maybe electing isn't the right word. They kind of have to pursue these certifications to get money. So I was realizing how much the certifications were tied to all of these other programs and incentives and that sort of thing. So that got my gears turning and led me to pursue a certificate in real estate development because I could see how many decisions were being made before a project got to me. So they already knew what certifications, they knew the location, they knew the layout, how many units they were going to have. They knew all of that and they held the purse strings. So I was like, how is this all working? Like there is a bigger system at play than just architects deciding where to build something and what it's going to look like. So that's how I got into the Thomas Jefferson Real Estate Development Certificate. So I took that at night, learning about all of these processes. And while that was happening too, I transitioned to revision architecture. And so that's where I am right now. And I'm a sustainability consultant there. So we do a lot of LEED consulting, but we also dabble in Passive House and Living Building Challenge. So I would say those are our top three frameworks that I'm looking at on a daily basis.
So you've been at Revision for how long now?
I've been there for a little over 2 years.
And you're a certified PHIUS Rater.
Yes.
How long ago did you become a certified PHIUS Rater, and what made you decide to do that?
Yeah, so that's actually been a recent development. I've had that for a couple of months, but I've been involved in Passive House even at my old job. And I think I actually just got the certification recently because a coworker that had the certification left. And so that prompted me to actually get the certification instead of just doing all of the work. Not all of the work, I shouldn't say that, but I was doing a lot of the work and reading all of the program documentation and doing a lot of the testing behind the scenes. So that was a couple months ago that I got that certification.
So in order to become a PHIUS Rater, that builds you upon Energy Star and DOE Net Zero Ready, correct? So you can't just sign up for a class and become a Rater. You also already have to be, what is the certification that you need beforehand, like a HERS Rater?
Yes. Yeah. HERS Rater is the big one that you're going to start out with. That is, I think it took me almost 2 weeks to work through. It's a series of tests that are virtual and in person, a bunch of classes that you have to take. And so that is the big one. And then there's a couple other certifications that you need to get on top of it. Such as the Energy Star high-rise, multifamily new construction, New Homes version 3. There's a bunch of these other certifications that you need to get that are specific to different, I'll call them rating systems. But the HERS rater is going to be the kind of the like overarching, this is how you're going to be testing things. And the additional certifications are, these are the testing goals that we're trying to get our building to reach. And then the PHIUS rater is, I kind of like to think of it as icing on the cake, because it really is, you have all of these other certifications. All of the QA processes also happen at these other different levels. And so PHIUS kind of tacks onto that. These are the stringency of these requirements. This is the stringency of the home, and we want to make sure that the homes meet this requirement.
And you've worked on both single family homes and a larger project.
Yes.
So let's talk about the single family home first. Can you tell us about the project and what verification you did on that one?
Yeah, definitely. So the one single family home that I'm working on right now, finishing up, is a 4-bedroom home located in the suburbs of PA, and it's going for PHIUS. And this was a very architecturally complex project. I'm used to working on multifamily. That's what I started out with. And so those units are 1-bedroom units. You have the one air handler. It's pretty straightforward in terms of testing procedures. But this building had 6 different air handlers, 2 ERVs, a water recirculation loop that was a little complex. So it was an architecturally complex building to figure out how to test, let alone get it to pass the parameters that PHIUS has.
Can you talk just in general first about what needs to get tested?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the big test that everyone really likes to talk about is the blower door test. And this test is seeing how well the building's envelope does in separating more or less the inside from the outside. And we test that by pressurizing the inside, or you can depressurize as well. You can do it in both ways. But to see how much air it takes to maintain a pressure difference inside the house from outside the test. And so how much air do we need to pump into this building to continuously keep that pressure difference? And we want that to be as small as possible because we want the building to be as tight as possible. And this building actually did great all throughout construction. We did one mid-construction test and one final construction test. And both times it passed pretty easily. While going through this, we did some IR photos. We did some analysis with smoke sticks to see maybe there are specific areas that things are leaking at. And we did find a couple areas and we did patch them up. One in particular that I'm reminded of is there was a problem with the air barrier on the basement level. I believe that the air barrier is packaged up when it's being sent to the home, kind of folded up in half. And at that crease area, we realized that it had actually been slightly damaged either during folding it or during transit. And this damage wasn't something that we could pick up visually at first. It was something that we actually picked up on the IR camera because there were all of these different air infiltrations or energy infiltrations that was appearing around like eye level. And that didn't really make sense because we didn't see anything. It was completely smooth to the eye, but we were able to find this through the verification that with the procedures that we had to go through with the IR and the blower door test. But yeah, the building passed, so that was great.
And you're referring to a membrane, correct? For the
Yes.
air barrier. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. So how does the blower door test actually work? Because you have to pressurize and under pressurize. correct?
Yes.
And it has to pass both?
Yes, correct. So we pressurize the building. So the building would be we'd be pushing air into the building to maintain that pressure difference. And we would be running a second test where we would be pulling air out of the building. So the building is at a negative pressure compared to the outside. And so by doing each of these tests, the results are going to be similar to one another. But we do both of these tests because some things, the building is going to be, when in practice, when the building is operational, it's going to be experiencing both. By wind hitting one side of the building is going to create a negative pressure inside, but then it's also on the other side of the building going to be creating the opposite situation. So the building is going to be subject to both conditions. So that's why it's important to test it in both conditions. But you can also have situations where a piece of mechanical equipment might fail during depressurization or during pressurization, but not the other way around. So that's why it's important to test both.
And do you yourself conduct the blower door tests?
Yes, I do. I bring all the equipment in my car, set it up, hook it up. Yes.
And so you said you started out on multifamily buildings and single family buildings to do a blower door test on a single family building is pretty straightforward, but multifamily buildings can be more complicated. Can you talk a little bit, since we're talking about blower door tests, can you talk a little bit about your experience with blower door testing larger buildings?
Yeah, definitely. So back in my Energy Star days, when we just did Energy Star, we actually didn't need to do a whole building blower door test. We only had to do compartmentalization testing, where we test each unit individually, but never having to look at the building as a whole. And this is slowly changing, but so doing a compartmentalization test is pretty straightforward, but you're just going to get a very low number. An interesting thing to the compartmentalization testing is that you're testing all four walls of the unit, but a lot of times with apartment unit, only one of those walls is exposed to the exterior. And really, that's where your heat transfers happen, just one of those 6 sides of the box. It's definitely important because you care about, if some person is smoking in another unit, you don't want that to get into your unit. If someone's AC is off on a really hot day because they're away on vacation, you still care about all of these things with air transfer. A whole building multifamily test can get pretty complex, especially because they get pretty big. And I think they're getting huge nowadays, some of the passive house buildings that people are building out there. But just some things to think about are you have to have all of the doors open. And so if you have a 200 unit building that you're testing, you need to have at least 200 door stops on you when you show up to testing. And those things aren't inconsequential. So you really need to be thinking that way as well as you need to make sure that the whole building is depressurized. So even if you have a blower door fan in one location, it might take a while for that pressure change to happen in the rest of the building. So being able to work with your equipment and getting that to function correctly, it's a longer process, but it is more of an art form, I would say, for testing large buildings.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Back to the compartmentalization, I remember that there is quite a bit different. There are different targets, right, for air tightness for those tests compared to a passive house envelope test. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Let me see if I remember. I believe that the air tightness test for PHIUS, let's say, that is 0.06 CFM 50 per square foot of envelope area. And I believe that the compartmentalization is 0.3. And so it's a less stringent requirement that we need to reach.
Yeah.
And I think this is because it's for a variety of reasons. One, you are only caring about 1/6 of your envelope at that point in time, because that's where the biggest energy transfer is happening. But the other one is that the 0.3 is more so connected to Energy Star. And that kind of brings me back to the point that PHIUS is built on top of all of these other rating systems. And so the 0.3 is more or less around an Energy Star type of standard. And Energy Star is a less strict framework that we need to follow. And so that brings up a whole nother conversation of, how are we comparing Energy Star to these passive houses, especially when I'm looking at affordable housing. It's, how are Energy Star buildings designed? A lot of them are designed as exhaust only, whereas passive house buildings are this like a balanced ventilation, and you don't need to have an ERV bringing in nice, clean, filtered air. You can have air seeping through the walls. And that's supplementing your exhaust only systems. I remember when I first heard about PHIUS and balanced ventilation, I was like, oh, that's a thing? Like, I've just been working on exhaust only buildings my entire career. So that is something that I've been slowly realizing are the intricacies that go into all of these certifications. Because I like to, when I think about this on my free time, I think a lot about how certification systems are really beneficial because they provide a QA process, not only for me, for buildings. They provide like a structured educational system for professionals. There are incentives that are all around these certification systems, but certification systems aren't perfect, and hopefully it'll become code one day. So hopefully they will all become irrelevant. That's really the goal here, I think.
Yeah, and going back to who benefits from certification, I mean, for example, a single family home, that's definitely the owner too, right? Because one of the tests that you have to conduct is the duct leakage and also the balancing. So that's really, really important. And that's not something that typically gets done after the installer is done installing the system, right? It's basically, okay, here you go, but nobody comes back to really test if everything is balanced and working correctly.
Yeah, definitely. Balancing is hugely important, not only because you want the building to operate as designed, but you're going to be creating imbalances, and you're going to probably have complaints from the people who are living there, and they don't really understand exactly how this building is supposed to function. But they can tell when something's not functioning correctly.
I understand you've been working on a dorm project. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Where it's starting with, where is this project?
Yes. So this is another project that's focused in the suburbs of Philly. Most of the passive house projects that I'm working on are in the Philadelphia area because as a rater, you need to go to these projects in person with a lot of equipment. And so I can only go to places that are a max of 2-hour drives away from me. This project is located in the northern suburbs of Philadelphia, and it's connected to a private school. And this dorm is going to have 4 faculty unit apartments and then 16 student units. And it's interesting because these units are considered sleeping units, not dwelling units, because they're rooms, essentially. They don't have kitchens, they don't have bathrooms. All of that is in the common spaces. So looking at PHIUS, it's like, well, PHIUS will accept the building, but can Energy Star? Because a requirement of PHIUS is that it get Energy Star, and Energy Star's definition of the applicable type building types is based on ResNet. And so that you have to bounce through from certification to certification and see can this building become PHIUS, or is it going to get held up because it doesn't have a hot plate or it doesn't have a toilet in all of these rooms? So going back to layered certifications, that was a challenge at the very beginning before even committing to Passive House. But thinking about compartmentalization for this project, because the units are so small, I still need to do compartmentalization testing. I'm thinking that my standard blower door unit that I bring is probably going to be too strong. So I'll probably need to manipulate my duct blaster fan, which is a smaller fan, manipulate that to use that to be able to conduct the compartmentalization testing. So, you think about, testing should be easy. No, there are things that I need to be constantly thinking about in the back of my head about how are we actually going to test this.
And have you had to do that ever before? I have heard of other people having to use a duct blaster fan because it's smaller and it can measure smaller pressure differences. But have you ever had to do that in the field?
I have not had to, so this will be my first time, and I expect that I'll need it. I'll be able to swap in and out, but I do have the equipment, so it shouldn't be all that different, I don't expect. But you need to not forget that piece of equipment before you drive and go to the site that day.
And the door stoppers.
And the many door stoppers that I will need, yes.
So at the end, how do you categorize the dorm? Because I was actually really curious about that, because in some way you would think it's a multifamily, but since you don't have a kitchen in each apartment, like what is this?
Right. Yeah, it is going to be multifamily. Yeah, it does fall under Energy Star's multifamily new construction program. So yeah, even though it is kind of a funky situation, that's what it will be.
Yeah, I feel like it's so interesting about, the layering of certification and just knowing that even PHIUS is basically layered on top of these other certifications. And that also reflects in how the CPHC basically prepares documentation for the rater, because sometimes they actually don't really talk to each other. How do you see that?
I'll say with Energy Star, there is no CPHC type of person in this. So I think jumping into PHIUS, that was something new that I needed to figure out. What is this relationship supposed to be looking like? And so I am constantly thinking about that, because they're looking at different things than me too. They're looking at the best way to do the detailing and the best way to handle the air barrier and working around all of that sort of thing. But there are key pieces of information, and I think that they do want to be kept in the loop for all of these certain tests. And it's kind of like the more that they know about the process, the more that they can help me, and the more that I know about their process, the more I can help them at the same time. So while I don't think that they should be too intermixed, like I don't need to be doing a CPHC's job, I think there is a layer that of overlap that I think would be beneficial for us both.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that you need different information, right? That you actually, so the CPHC works with a P3P or a WFI model, and then you work with what's your model called?
Yes, it's called a REM rate model.
A REM rate model, yeah, and needs different information, right?
Yeah. It definitely looks at different information, and it simplifies the building, I believe, in different ways than the WFI model might.
Exactly.
And it's using, and it's referencing probably different standards as well. So I know the one thing that we were looking at was window values, and like what should the window value be in these different modeling softwares. So that's just something that I think I've seen them consistently updating the REM rate model to be able to get it to meet these higher standards, because we're developing all of these certifications to go along with it, and building science is evolving. But I think it's just something that they're also working on behind the scenes.
So did I understand correctly that you have to do a REM rate model for every PHIUS building?
Yes. So the REM rate model is connected to Energy Star. That is something that all Energy Star units need to have for one of the 3 pathways that they can elect to do. I find it's the most common for the buildings that I've worked on in the past. Really large buildings that used to be labeled as high rises, so like 5 floors and over, can do a whole building, I believe, ASHRAE model. But I've mostly been working on 2 and 3 story buildings in the past that are pursuing Energy Star. And they've shifted around the Energy Star program in recent years. And one of the new additions that they just released of the Energy Star program has included PHIUS or Passive House, I believe, in general. So PHI buildings, I believe, can also work. That if you have this, if you are pursuing this certification and meet this certification in this is more complicated, but if you're pursuing this certification and you get this certification, you don't need to do this duplicate energy model, which makes a lot of sense because right now I'm just duplicating a lot of the work. But the thing is that the Zero Energy Ready Homes certification that's run by the Department of Energy, they submit the certifications through the REM rate model. It's a checkbox that I need to do to be able to produce the certificate that I need to give to PHIUS. And so it's this loop that's not working correctly, that where Energy Star is saying you don't need it, and PHIUS is saying, I need these 2 certifications, and the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready Homes needs it. And right now, the Zero Energy Ready Homes has a draft document out having the same exemption as Energy Star, but I don't think the draft isn't going to get approved until after this multifamily project that I'm working on is completed. So I think I still need to do the REM rate model.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, all kind of sounds pretty complicated, right? But I think it really just comes down to knowing what the other person does. And I do think that while you go through all the documentation, I mean, the rater at the end finds errors, right? That otherwise would have gone by without anyone noticing it, and nobody knows what actually happened. So I do think there's quite a bit of value in that last look at everything, basically.
Yeah, there definitely is. And there's always little things that you can catch along the way. And I mean, yes, it gets a little annoying at the end, but a lot of times I just think back and I think of like the people that are going to be living in these homes. We have to deal with the construction process for a year or 2, but these homes are going to be hopefully existing for 30 or 60 years. And we want to be able to create homes that are going to operate in the correct way, because like, especially with affordable housing, like these are people's first, this is like an amazing opportunity for these people. And so giving them a place that is going to have low energy bills, that's not going to create mold, like we can suck it up. We can deal with these problems if people can really get somewhere like really great to live.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing in that perspective. That's a great perspective to keep in mind. And looking at larger roles, I understand that you've stepped into the facilitator role of the Green Building United, which is a green building group based in Philadelphia. Can you tell us a little bit about your role there and what the goals are for the group for the next year?
Yeah, definitely. So Green Building United is a Philadelphia area-based organization that is really focused on all areas of green building. So we look at various certifications, but we're really just trying to bring everyone together with the goal of sustainability in our built environment. And so I gravitated towards the Passive House community. They have a variety of communities. Some are location based, so people in the Lehigh Valley, people in Delaware, but some communities are kind of like certification based, I'll say, or Yeah, we'll say certification based. So we have the Passive House community and the Living Building Challenge community, Living Futures community, sorry. And so with the Passive House community, we are really focused on bringing people together that are enthusiastic about passive building principles. We like to say that we're a non-denominational organization, so all Passive House, everyone is welcome. And we do happy hours throughout the year. We do building tours. That's one of my favorite things to do, is tour buildings that are pursuing a Passive House certification while they're in construction, and then seeing them at the end too, as well as host educational events and learn about different product manufacturers, that sort of thing. And so some of the groups that we have, some of the goals for our group in the next year, for me, one of the big things is Passive House literacy, I like to say. Because I think our group, there are many people who have been with Passive House through the beginning. They love it. They are so educated. They have so much knowledge. But then you also have people like me who, and this is all new to me. I've been in the field for 5 years learning about all of these things. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there like me. Yes, we need to educate architects, but what are all of the other groups of people that need to know about this? The contractors, the developers, all of these people that are involved in the built environment. What do we want them to know about Passive House? So what is our building pitch? What is our Passive House 101? What do they need to know so that they can be our supporters as well? And so I think that's a huge thing that I really want to push. So we have been doing a Passive House 101, also have been connecting with other organizations in the Philadelphia area, like ULI, which is the Urban Land Institute. There's Women in Construction. There's also other offices of sustainability that we're in communications with, because I think a lot of people are just interested in this new concept and want to learn more about it. So yeah, how can we be advocates for Passive House building strategies, and how can we make it more mainstream? I think that's what our focus is.
It's been great hearing your enthusiasm for the whole field that you're in. It's really
Thank you.
Exciting to see the expansion of Passive House, the growth.
Yeah, I'm not the most technical person that will be able to talk about Passive House, but I think that it's a really great tool to be thinking about what our built environment should be operating like. I think a lot about, also in my free time, a lot of topics about inequality in the built environment, like redlining and predatory lending, and also and this goes back to the certificate program that I took about Philadelphia's deteriorating quality of housing stock and what that might mean to weatherize and make those buildings safe and mold-free and all of those things. And also Black wealth inequality, because so much of wealth comes from home ownership, and with redlining, that didn't exist. And so you think about all of these things and how Passive House can start to make the unequal a little bit more equal. And I think that's definitely a direction that we need to bring Passive House in, because it is a chance to provide healthy buildings and healthy homes and really support all people in that way. So I think that's a great tool. And that's kind of why I'm so invested in it, because I can see the benefits that come from designing a house that can keep people healthy.
Right. And this week in particular, there's been, you've been experiencing extreme smoke events. And so the benefits of Passive House, the benefits of air tightness testing have really been driven home this week.
Yeah, I think us on the East Coast, we're very privileged with our clean air and our abundance of water. And I know the West Coast, we don't realize what that's like a lot of times to be on the West Coast or to be in areas that don't have those luxuries.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this expertise. And I think it's just great how you really try and pull all your different backgrounds together, even coming from the real estate side and combining that with rating.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah.
Keep
I mean,
up
I
the
think
good
it's a
work.
key piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having you come and talk to us. Thanks.
Anytime. All right. Thank you so much.
And that was Emily Smith, who is a sustainability consultant and project coordinator at Revision. Let's start with you, Ilka. You've had some stuff to do with Revision before, as we mentioned. They've been on the show before. What were your sort of main takeaways from your catch up with Emily?
Well, Emily, we're working on a project together right now, so it was nice to catch up with her this way too. And I think it's great to have that conversation about what a rater actually does, because I feel like a lot of times we focus on the energy model or maybe the blower door test, but sometimes it's not quite understood what else the rater actually tests. So it was nice to hear about the duct leakage testing, for example, or the hot water measurements and all of that, and how it really basically goes back to the benefits of going through certification and the benefits that the homeowner has at the end.
Yeah, when it happens, I mean, she made a really good point there that particularly in residential buildings, that it doesn't always happen. Stuff gets installed and then it's just handed over and assume people know, firstly, that it's been commissioned and balanced properly, and secondly, that it's people know how to operate it. And what I'm hearing about and what makes sense is that just because stuff's commissioned at the beginning doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay balanced with different seasons or with change of use. And that just doesn't happen as much in the residential field, because there's not really a building maintenance manager or someone who's looking after that stuff. She mentioned duct blast. We sort of geeked out a little bit on pressure testing, which was great. Love a bit of a technical deep dive. But if people want more information on pressure testing and duct blasters and things like that, then check out. Well, I would imagine start by having a look through the accelerator. There's a whole bunch of information there. Mary, what was standouts for you?
Well, I did feel like it was a Passive House 101 session on the rating process. She really dives into the details about that. And a lot of people kind of vaguely think, oh, yeah, I know about the rating process, but they don't know the specifics. So I thought she was good at explaining it. And I appreciated her kind of summing up that certification provides a quality assurance process, a structured educational experience, and access to incentives. So that was a good description of why more people should consider certifying their projects. And like you were just talking about, in single family homes, especially, I mean, I think in multifamily homes, there's more often a building manager, but in single family homes, who's the building manager? Well, it's you and I. And how often are we checking our systems?
Yeah, I imagine there's lots of people down Ilka's part of the world that need their filters changed this week. If they know where they are or how to get to them, I probably need to do the same here with my filters on my ventilation system. The concept of layering of certifications, I mean, it's amazing how broad the services are from Revision through their consulting. They do pretty much all flavors of certifications from LEED. She talked about hers, of course, but even to living building, and of course Passive House. And so it's really interesting hearing her talk about how they all relate to each other from a design point of view, but also from a certification and this work to sort of try and minimize the repeat work that's required sometimes at the moment for doing different energy models. I know that can be quite overwhelming, probably frustrating for the design team. So it's good to see some sort of coordination there. But great to have companies like Revision who are so experienced and have so much knowledge about all those different potential rating tools and able to help people navigate all of that. The other thing I really like is the idea of building tours during the construction phase. I'm really keen. I promote this when I talk to builders and say, that's often the best time to bring people through the building, is not when it's all finished and is looking beautiful with its finished lovely kitchen, but when it's got the air tightness, the vapor control layers, and it's all closed in, and the ventilation system is visible, the windows are in and working, and you can put a blower door on and test the thing. That's a really great time to do a building tour, particularly like a Passive House 101, Mary, where you can really use that experience to show people all the systems that make a difference to the overall performance. So I really love that idea. Really cool stuff. Anything else, Ilka or Mary?
Well, I think you were just talking about layering of certification. I mean, that's something that's very special, I think. I feel like about the PHIUS rating, that it layers on top of Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready homes. But what comes with it is that there are different checklists and different tests that have to be done by layering it that way. And I think it's just something that everyone needs to be aware of. That's not just about passing a blower door test, but it's also about passing the water sense testing or the duct balancing and all of that. That is not part of the WUFI model, but is part of the rating at the end. So I think just being aware of communicating a little bit more and earlier on with the rater is just a benefit to everyone if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good.
And what she brought up about that, there's a draft for Energy Star, which exempts having to do a REM rate model for a PHIUS project, and that's in the works for Zero Energy Ready Home certification as well, but it's not here yet. So it's great that there's progress and
there's progress. Yeah,
having to do that duplication.
Yeah.
And awesome. I guess the other thing that I was surprised about too is that you can't just sign up for a class to become a PHIUS rater, right? You already have to be a HERS rater in good standing, actually, and then you as a rater can layer that PHIUS rater, being a PHIUS rater on top of that as well. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, Ilka, because I mean, Emily's, I think, quite modest in that regard. You don't get to that level without a good chunk of experience, and clearly she is experienced doing the design work, doing the certification, but also lugging around big fans and doing blower door tests and that experience on the ground as well. So a fantastic asset to the whole team at Revision, I would imagine. You can check out Revision Arch. We'll put a link to them in the show notes, and also check out back in episode 62 of the Passive House podcast. We interviewed Angela, who is also, that was another great conversation with Mary and Ilka, interviewing Angela from Revision as well. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Mary and Ilka, as always. Zach, what have we got coming up?
Yeah, so this week we have a appearance by Juan Manuel Castaño Salvador of Castaño y Asociados, based in Spain. He will be presenting on Wednesday, June 21st, our time in North America, so the June 22nd your time, which is, by the way, summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere and winter solstice for you in the Southern Hemisphere. He'll be presenting a project showcase edition of Passive House Accelerator Live, and he is going to be sharing this gorgeous, historic Passive House hotel project, and it's entitled Hot Climate, Cool Solutions Inside Seville's Passive House Hotel. We just saw a sneak peek of it, Kim Davis and I. And it's really a stunning piece of work, and where the interior designer had a tremendous amount of kind of sway and power. So they needed to figure out how to do this project without using mini splits. So the cooling strategies are really interesting. Anyway, please join us for that. I also want to just direct people to take a look, if you like, our new YouTube channel called Reimagine Buildings. We just produced the first episode of our massive passive series, and it feels like we're really getting some momentum and kind of wind underneath our wings here with these. So this was a story about the iconic retrofits that are called Casa Passiva, and these are retrofits that are being done by Riseborough in New York City. Chris Benedict is the architect. And Carmel Pratt is the host of this new series. Reimagine Buildings team just did a really great job in telling that story. So please check out youtube.com. You can type in Reimagine Buildings in the search bar, or you can do youtube.com/@Reimagine Buildings as the URL. So there's also other great stuff going on in the community that we will share in show notes. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Ilka and Mary. Ilka, you're off on a trip back to Germany for a few weeks?
Yeah, I'm going to leave in 2 days, actually. I'm going to go to Germany to visit the family, and then I'm also going to go to Ireland this year. So I'm hoping to visit some passive houses there and do maybe some interviews.
Yeah, and there are plenty to see there. We understand. Doing some really good stuff in that part of the world. Well, safe travels. We'll look forward to hearing from you, maybe possibly from there. Otherwise, when you get back. In the meantime, we'll be back again next week on the Passive House podcast.